A bit dramatic, much? Party pooper. Hello, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen. I'm sure many of you are familiar with The Nightmare Before Christmas. A true holiday classic. You can watch it on Halloween, you can watch it on Christmas, you can watch it whenever the hell you want, really, but it's a great, great movie. One of Tim Burton's finest. Today I'm going to be reading a fanfic about The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's actually a continuation of the story, per se. It is called Murder Mystery of Sally by Mindspatch. This is on DeviantArt, so I can't tell you how many reviews and stuff it got, but I'll give you a heads up. The author himself, I actually agreed to review this fanfic when they mentioned that they thought that this fanfic wasn't exactly a great fanfic of theirs, but I want to read it for myself. So, let's take a look. What? You killed that horrible and gruesome ghoul, Oogie Boogie? Asked the mayor, still completely stunned. Jack nodded. When I went to rescue Santa Claus and Sally, I pulled him apart, and his packing fell into a scalding cauldron created to cook my two good friends. Santa Claus and Sally would be steeped into lava had I not saved them. The mayor was delighted at the prospect of Lockshock and Barrel's employer being vanquished, but could not help but still feel worried. How do you determine that he's gone for good? I notice that this author has commas in places that don't really make any sense. Let me show you an example. Frankly, you do not need a comma there. Let's continue. Inquired the mayor. They forgot to capitalize the M in mayor. Jack smiled in a way that almost frightened the mayor. I saw his stuffing burn and smashed away. But, if you wish, I could venture to his residence and collect what remains. So Jack did just that. The journey to Oogie's empty lair was short, and soon Oogie's empty sack was collected from the large seeping cauldron. Something tells me that's not how you spell cauldron. Thus proving to Jack's satisfaction that the evil sack of bugs was indeed vanquished. Finally, Jack at last knew he could put the nightmare that was Christmas behind him. Merely 2 months later, Jack and Sally were married. Many well-wishers watched the ceremony. A fabulous feast was thrown, with all manner of food and gifts being given to the bride and groom. Eventually, evening ended the party. So Jack and Sally strode away to their tower. Okay, so Jack and Sally should be a sentence. I mean, technically, it's not a sentence even. Well, it should be a sentence, but because of how the author wrote it, it's not, because the last sentence ends with a comma and not a period. So get rid of that comma at the end of party and make it into a period so the next sentence can be a legit sentence. No one suspected what would happen next. Yet, lurking in the shadows, miserable and mad, a mother waited, her only desire being vengeance for the injustice she knew had been done on her only offspring, Oogie Boogie. The grim golem was called Gwendoline, and she made her home in the muddy mire, which was secluded just outside Halloween Town. I notice that this has a bit of a similarity to Beowulf. She had taken to stalking the streets, searching for the one that had killed her baby. Finally, she found the famous watchtower of the Skellingtons, and daringly broke down the door. Wasting no time, she hurried up the dizzying staircase. At the large room at the top, she cautiously looked around to see if anyone stirred, before she burst into the couple's bedchamber. If she's cautiously looking around to see if they would waken, why would she go bursting in if she's trying to sneak in? Wouldn't it make more sense that she snuck in quietly? When the uninvited guest wandered in, Sally could only stare at the gruesome sight. A previously jovial Jack jumped from his bed, prepared to fight the fearsome female. Gwendoline grabbed one of Jack's torches, which hung from the wall. Meanwhile, Jack managed to find a mace on his wall hanging and charged toward the terrible golem. They battled bravely, and soon there was little doubt that Jack was the better warrior. Alas, Gwendoline was determined to have her due. Tearing herself away from the enraged skeleton, she rushed toward Sally so quickly, what happened next was as if a blur to Jack. Sally hissed and moaned hysterically as she was pulled and picked to pieces by her head. Before Jack could act, his beloved was strewn all about the place, with Gwendoline grimacing triumphantly at the gruesome scene. Then, you need to capitalize the T and then if that's the beginning of the next sentence. As quickly as she had entered, the evil entity escaped out the window. Jack stood stunned at the horrible sight of his brand new bride brutally dismembered. Slowly he sat down and began to sob. The morning after that monster murdered poor Sally, Jack's pretty paramour, he swiftly sought to see the mayor. The mayor smiled when he saw the skeleton, and typically clueless, began to ask how the upcoming about the upcoming Halloween agenda. Okay, you spelled Halloween wrong. Please don't speak about next upcomings like Halloween, pleaded Jack, for Sally has been forcefully robbed from me. My wife was killed in the most horrid way during the battle. A golem dared to enter my house and slaughtered her. Then she ran without a trace. Jack paused for a moment and began to recall something about the intruder. She looked familiar, almost as if she was somehow related to that terrible Oogie. How terrible, Jack. Okay. If a person is spoken dialogue should be in their own separate paragraphs. And right now, it's in this paragraph. As you can clearly see, that is very hard to read, so please break it up. The mayor cried, turning his head so his pale face was now toward Jack. Oogie's mother, a golem who goes by Gwendoline, has been here in Halloween Town. The mayor then shook his head, but most of the time she stays in the mire and does not distress the town denizens. Jack stood and pounded the table with a fist. Such a horrible deed cannot be tolerated. It's worse than what her son did. I vow by the very marrow in my bones she will suffer the same as her son. Soon after, Jack set out for the swamp. Down into the deep dales and over steep hills he headed from the fading forest on towards the mire, where Madame Gwendoline, Oogie's mother, would be waiting. Madeline, who grimly guarded the swamp's perimeter, saw someone tall and thin coming. Okay, why is the S in saw capitalized? It's not the beginning of a new sentence. It's part of the current sentence. Correctly deducting that it was the Pumpkin King. Okay, the P in pumpkin should be capitalized, seeing his title is the Pumpkin King. She hid till he came closer to her abode. Unfortunately, Jack failed to detect her presence, and she was able to beat him down much like a baseball being hit with a bat, which knocked the skeleton senseless. The devilish nightmare then dragged him home, far deep into the mire. Reaching the cave where she resided, she crawled inside, taking her unwitting companion with her. Once inside, she dropped him to the cave's stone floor. Lifting a large boulder, she lunged at him, preparing to pound his bones to powder. I'll thank Grimacer for telling me what happened to my son, devil, she spoke. Just as she said those words, Jack jolted himself just out of reach and swiftly searched for any sort of weapon he could use. She smashed the stone into his skull, but fortunately not so hard as to break it. Although in pain, Jack managed to barely move before she made another strike. Then he snatched his own stone. Take a look at this space, please. That needs to be placed elsewhere. Let's continue. Then he snatched his own stone and with all his might thrusted it at her. Gwendoline grinned, for the stone didn't even make a dent. Jack faltered. Although he'd failed to face her, at least when she tried to attack again, he managed to avoid her blow. Leaping further away from the fierce golem, Jack found himself trapped at the end of the tunnel. As Gwendoline gained upon him, Jack suddenly saw a glimmer of hope. On her wall was a splendid weapon, a silver Skidamar, which was her line's legacy. Her father, Puck, had favored it for fighting, and it had been passed down from untold generations all the way back to Ard, the founder of her lineage. Caring not for the cutting devices chronicled, Jack grabbed it and gutted Gwendoline. Now tell me who this grimacer is before your body starts to wither, Jack said urgently. Don't be too pleased yet. He will kill you soon, Deadite, she stated, feeling her life force departing. The sword had yet to see failure, and had once more dealt success to its wielder. With Gwendoline's death, the family lineage had come to a well-deserved end. Somehow the death of Gwendoline's could hardly fill the hole in his heart left by the departed Sally. Answers. I need answers. Why wouldn't she tell me? Our skeleton cried fiercely. He slowly stalked out of the swamp, heading back towards Halloween Town. Well, that's the end of chapter 1. Let's go on to the next part. Why? Jack gloomily opened his door. Okay, the J in Jack should be capitalized because that's his name. Tired. Okay, the T in tired should be capitalized because that's the beginning of the sentence. And the H in he should not be capitalized because it's not the beginning of the sentence. Tired, he walked up the winding stairs to his room and do not have an ampersand instead of and! Seriously? My God! Is it really that hard to write down A-N-D? I have to keep in mind the story was probably written a while ago, and the author did tell me that it wasn't exactly the best fanfic in the world, but still, if you have the power to edit it, please. And fell down onto his bed. The W and Y should be capitalized because it's the beginning of the spoken dialogue, and the dialogue should be in the new paragraph and not the current paragraph. Why has this happened to you? Jack lamented. Again, the J in Jack should be capitalized. He knew that what Gwendoline had done was killed for shamefully killing his one and only Sally. This he had to look upon. He planned to see every full moon with Sally at his side. He realized that he was stupid for thinking this. He yelled out loud, "Give me strength to kill who have done this evil deed, my heart." He sobbed into his bed, just thinking of what he had done. He knew what he had done could just make him go to the fates shortly. Suddenly Zero, the Z in Zero should be capitalized, seeing Zero is the ghost dog thing's name, peered into the room to see Jack staring at him. Again, the J in Jack should be capitalized because it's his name. Hi, Zero. I'm not even going to say it anymore. You guys reading on with me, you can see for yourself the grammar mistakes here. Hi, Zero. Jack greeted while looking at the black nothingness of the floor to relieve his pain. Or relive his pain, I don't know. I wish I could help you understand what's going on. Is he supposed to be speaking here? I think he is. I mean, take a look at this yourself. I mean, it comes across as spoken line here. I mean, even if it's not, if it's supposed to be his thoughts, it should be like italicized and, again, not in the middle of the paragraph. Let's continue. Zero floated to Jack. Jack wished that he could tell Zero what he told the mayor. Don't worry, Zero. Jack smirked. His expression changed at the window, panting his eye sockets. At the window, panting his eye sockets at the moon, and glanced, thinking of evil he vanquished. Don't you mean an evil? I'm lonely, and thinking of that nightmare is not helping me altogether. I don't think that's how you spell altogether. I think you need to take out one of the L's in that word. When I go to sleep, I'll wake to see the pumpkin sun. Do not worry, my dear friend. It will soon be gone, this nightmare of mine. During the long hours of night, Jack yelped at his dream, just like Zero when he wanted to play, though he felt the clenching hand of doom coming to get him. That's not how you spell coming. Get rid of one of the M's. Jack saw Sally as though she was there in his room, only this was at Spiral Hill, the pathway to the hinterlands. She pierced her eyes towards the ground and looked back at him with a semi-smile. Jack, you found out about Grimacer's whereabouts, and stop him before he tries to start killing others. Starts killing. What do you what? What? Exclamation point. Do you mean you know that there are more of these killings coming to pass? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to be like, what? But maybe you should have it be a question mark and then an exclamation point instead of just having it be an exclamation point. Jack asked. If he's asking, why the heck is it in all capital letters like he's yelling? She screamed a pain like a crow. Darkness was forming around her waist, grabbing her with shadowy hands. Jack stood clenching his teeth together with a fire-like glow ready to fly. Jack ran toward her. As he was about to grab her hand, thunk. Fool. Zero. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Will you please don't wake me up with your ball? Whoa, what? You should have had the word thonk be its own separate paragraph, and then have a little explanation here that Jack was woken up by Zero and not have it say thonk, fool, Zero, I'm sorry. I mean, seriously. You need to have better transitions. This is why you don't just have random paragraph blogs. This is why you plan your paragraphs accordingly. Because when you have something like this happen in the middle of a paragraph, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Zero, I might just know what to do. To the library. So you're going to throw balls at the villain? Jack leaned over to see the new day, but more was needed to be known about the one Gwendoline called as Grimacer. I noticed that at the bottom of this, Mind's badge has a little message here saying, I created this a long time ago, but now I polished it. Well, you must not have polished it that well because I'm still noticing a lot of grammar errors. So let's move on to chapter 3. By the way, there's 9 chapters. Jack went to Halloween Town's main street, carrying his book in his arm on the side of his hip. He told Zero to stay as he walked to Shock's residence. As it was a mile to say. Though it was hard for him to leave his house, he tried the best he could. A large scarf was worn over his mouth and neck where it was raining. People stared at him, even Brooker lycanthrope werewolf. Usually, he would only see Jack as he walked to the graveyard, but this was different of him. A glance grew on him as he saw Jack cowering in his scarf. The red scarf given to him from St. Nicholas. The tears were drowning it. The look on him was quite grim. Jack knew that it was best to lichen alone. Now, off to Shock's place, murmured Jack as he was trying to make through the wind of rain. Don't you mean the wind and rain pushing towards his body? As fast as he could get to their doorstep, question mark. Why the heck is there a question mark at the end of that? Is the sentence asking me a question? No, it should be a comma, not a, I don't know. It was 4 p.m. as he arrived. He shook off the rain on his body. His knuckle rapped on the door as he looked upon the keyhole. A voice came to reach. "State your business," a familiar voice spat behind the door. Jack Skellington. "Come to see Shock and her 2 brothers," Jack said, still and cold. "Your look in at them," they said in unison. "Jack, what's that book in your hand?" asked Beryl. "Well, that the reason why I wanted to come and see you," Jack responded in shivered tone. "We got a fireplace ready," Locke said as he ran to get a blanket. He looked down at floor's wood mahogany. Why, I really hate missing words. Shock pulled out a big armchair as Jack sitted down on the seat. Shouldn't it say as Jack sat down on the seat, seeing "sitted" is not a word? He looked up. "Do you know Grimacer?" Jack asked the troublemakers. Who? Locke jumped off his seat. "Grimacer." Jack stared straight at Locke. "Well, why don't I get some tea?" Shock went to the kitchen. "Why don't we talk about this alone? How about tomorrow?" Locke scared at what he had just done. "Tomorrow will be fine." Jack stood up and partway glanced at him. He put his scarf back on. He wondered what scaring Jock was. Jack looked forward and ran out the door before Shock could get the tea out. Okay, let's move on to chapter 5. It was already a day after Jack's meeting with Locke. As Jack awoke from his slumber with his book on his nightstand, he grabbed Sally's mood ring from the nightstand next to him and put it on his ring finger. He walked down the hall steps of his home. Zero was already in the living room's front door, ready to go see his black cat friend, Rihanna. Jack looked down to him. Go see her. The skeletal face smirked as he opened the door, converting his eye sockets through his skinny long arms, the pumpkin sun already smiling at him. The streets were sizzling on this hot day. "What time is it?" Jack looking up at the floor as he walked towards town hall. Locke waved goodbye at his sister as he called to Jack, "You're late." Locke disappointedly told him. "Okay." "You never told me there was a time limit," Jack responded as the devil boy who grinned at this statement. "Do you have the book?" Locke asked. "Yes." Jack looked through his arms. The book was gone. "What? What happened to my book?" Jack looked back at the town. "How interesting." Locke, amazed at the records. Jack looked puzzled to find Locke with the book. "How did you?" Jack sputtered as he looked at his bony hands. "Oh, never mind that. Tell me where you found this book." Locke still faced down at the book. "In my library." Jack surprised at how Locke's expression changed from yesterday. "Okay, I'll tell you about Grimacer. Well, thank you for getting rid of our boss, but Grimacer killed our mother and father, and we didn't know why he had done it, but..." Locke started to shiver and then fainted. Jack's sockets opened wide in what had happened. Jack wished there was something he could do. He took his friend and carried him in his arms. As he took his first step, Shock looked at Jack's arms. He walked up to her doorstep. "Sorry, but will you please take Locke to his room? I think he needs some sleep." Jack put Locke in his sister's arms. "Of course," as Shock shut her door. Jack sat down on Shock's porch. Okay, that's the end of chapter 5. Let's move on to chapter 6. I'm not completely following what's going on in this story because it's just kind of confusing and all over the place. Jack groaned as he awoke. He looked at the shadow in the air. It was precisely be 5 o'clock in the morning. Wrong morning. How could everything go so fast around me, Jack thought. Everybody looked happy like before, but some faces grew upon his mind. The Lycan, Locke, and the mayor. They all had suspicious minds. They had the look that keeps him in this sea of memory. He knew that he was becoming a legend. From everywhere in the human world he would try to scare anyone in his path. What am I, a hero or a villain? What had to give him a heart? He had to bring back Sally. She was an innocent child until that brigand killed her. I must go to the Lycan if he can go on a quest for the one I love. Jack, putting his fist over his ribs. As he tilted his head down, the book was lifeless without someone to carry it, like a sword. He took the book, filling his stamina. Courage was making a heart for him. I am no monster, I am a hero. He closed his eyes to take his first steps off the leap. Darkness shrouded him no longer like a wrath. His shadow gone from the sight, he smiled with his eye sockets closed. Lycan looked down in the hinterland river. The thought of him drowning was answer he looked for, though it wasn't the end. Brooker, where are you? Jack cupped a circle around his mouth as he was looking for his friend. As closer through the forest, he heard mediocre splash. Brooker, Jack yelled as he ran as fast as he could. The water was too heavy to carry Bones, but maybe his arms were long enough to carry Brooker. Quick, he roped his arms around Brooker. Don't you mean wrapped? The Lycan as he fell to the ground. Brooker made a growlish cough. How dare you try to stop my passing? I want to die. Brooke was about to strangle Jack as he pushed him down. Why do you want to die? Jack exclaimed through a question. Because I cannot live in this world anymore. I'm always in the shadows. No brimmer of light to show I noticed. Sure, the mayor lets me sing all the songs of merriment in our town, but noon... That's not how you spell no one. It's supposed to be two separate words. But no one says goodbye to me when I leave town hall. Brooke reflects to Jack. Oh, Brooke, I notice you every day as a friend. Why, even Cyclops told me that you looked sad yesterday. You see, you have friends. You just don't notice. Jack assured the Lycan. Thanks, the werewolf complimented. Could you please do this favor for me? Sally's dead, and I believe there's a chance to bring her back. We must get her back before she falls victim to the hands of evil once again, Jack explained. I know it is difficult to live in your state, but trust me as your king. You swear an oath with a Lycan, a pact, questioned Brooke. As unto you I serve thee to do my task until a good act is done. Jack closed his eyes and nodded. I promise once we save Sally and her soul, your soul will be noticed. Jack put a hand onto his shoulder. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke smiled. Alright, let's go on, move on to chapter 7. Good news is there's only 2 more parts left after this. So let's go. If it'll load sometime today. Okay, chapter 7. Hope you like it here, Jack said as he started getting ready to pack. Wow, Brooke awed in amazement. You sure have a huge manor. That was made with a fortune and wedding present for my brother, Jack explained with a smile. You must have been a very happy child when they were around. Brooke spoke in a low tone. Yes, I had a very good childhood. Ravens sang their song, and the pumpkins were always grinning. I remember it so well. Yeah, it just switched to first person. Unless it's oh, I see. They forgot to put a quotation at the beginning of the sentence. I remember it so well, watching and learning from my father what being a good leader of screams was. Jack reminisced to lycanthrope friend. Brooke grinned, knowing that he must have been a good son. Jack grabbed a hiking pack and went to the shelf to see what was there. Brooke looked around with his heels high. The light from the stained glass window, decorated with the insignia of a spider, created a pattern on the cold stone floor. Looking to one side, there was a picture of Sally and Jack smiling to the camera that had taken it. The picture was actually moved, and vividly showed the couple laughing as well. Suddenly, Brooke's attention was brought back by Jack's voice, as he asked him to carry Sally's corpse. Of course. Brooke agreed. Ready? Jack asked. Yeah. Brooke replied. So did he just leave her corpse on the floor that entire time? And here's something that doesn't make any sense. In the movie, it was shown that Sally, fell apart and stuff. Like she would lose her arm and her leg. But she could sew herself back together. So why can't they just sew her back together? I mean, technically, I don't think she would have actually been killed by what had happened to her in this. It would have made more sense if, Gwendoline had set her on fire and burned her alive. That way she wouldn't be able to, she would actually be dead. But if all she did was tear her apart, then I don't see how she would be permanently dead. Couldn't she just piece herself back together or have someone else sew her back together? I'm just saying, with the logic of how Sally is, you would think they would just be able to sew her back together. Even if she was torn to little shreds, they would still be able to fix her. It'd just be very tedious, but it would work. As he returned the picture to its mantel. So what's this Locke guy like? Brooke asked. They continued walking as they continued their conversation. Well, he's moody, some might say, Jack told the lycanthrope with a concerned look on his skull. Could you just say werewolf, please? Seeing most people are more familiar with the term werewolf than they are with lycanthrope. I'm not so sure about this. What if he doesn't like me? Brooke asked. What are you asking? Like you're on a first date? You'll be fine. He just doesn't like people on his first meet, Jack calmed him. There you are, ladies. Now that I've got both of your attention, maybe I shall call you Mary-Kate Ashley. Locke snidely snickered. Okay, did Locke just magically appear out of nowhere? Watch your attitude, Locke, warned Jack in a menacing tone. Let me at him, Jack, Brooke growled. Brooke, we're on a rescue mission, not at kindergarten. Jack said as he pulled Brooke's muzzle towards his skull. So what's up? Jack said with no small amount of contempt at the two. Jack raised a bony finger and pointed at the brat in the devil costume. You are coming with us on a quest, he said, quite firmly. Wait, a quest? Are you pulling my tail? Locke asked suspiciously. Let's consider this. You join us on a quest, young Locke, or Fluffy here will finish you off. Staring at the snarling and drooling werewolf, Locke found Jack's argument quite persuasive. Hey, Brooke snarled, tired of being called girlish names. Well, what do you say? Jack asked. Locke felt a sweaty glance in hand. Locke stammered, too scared to argue with the skeleton any further. Well, that settles it. This will be your greatest adventure. Jack raised his hand to the sky. So in one chapter, Jack is being all nice and gentle with Locke, being very caring towards him. In the next one, he's pretty much threatening his life, saying, either you join us or you're dead. How charming. Let's move on to chapter 8. Locke had a hiking pack ready on his bed. Just what are you doing with a hiking pack? Shock said to her sibling. Have no time to explain. I have this urgent thing to do with Jack, Locke said in an exasperated tone. What about our badminton competition? Oh, our badminton competition, Shock yelled at Locke. Locke looked down, wondering what to say to Shock. Can we talk about that later? Locke asked his sister as he put on his hiking pack and jumped out the window. Locke, come back, Shock yelled, but he was nowhere to be seen. Locke, the mummy asked as Locke ran with full speed of a demon. With all your running, you should be already thin, Mummy pointed at Locke, kept running towards Jack's manor. Sorry, can't talk, Locke said to himself. The sun blinding him made him slower. Exiting his residence, Jack waved his hand at the sight of the winded Locke. I see you're in a more formal outfit than what you wore last time I saw you, Jack stated as he observed Locke's badminton uniform. What? Oh, my uniform. It's a little embarrassing for me to wear this silly thing, Locke said in an uninterested tone. Where's Brooke? Locke asked the skeleton. Huh? Jack stated, not really paying attention to Locke. Huh is not an answer, Locke yelled at Jack, still not paying attention. Get out of the way, cried Brooke, as a were-feline was after him. Why is this were-feline chasing me? Brian thought to himself. Brian? Brian? Who the hell is Brian? Who the hell is Brian? You can't just have the character's name go from Brooke to Brian. You just can't. Get that cat. one of the witches that inhabited Halloween Town proclaimed, "Is this really necessary? Can we just get on with the main story, please?" The corpse father, limbered as he was, why is there a parenthesis there, tried to catch the cat, but he slipped in a puddle and lost his chance. Then Zero bit the werecat's tail with hard ectoplasm. The cat transformed back into a human. The skeleton man ran over and scooped up the man's back with his hands. "Who are you, Jack?" asked the human. "I wish I could tell you," said the terrified human, "but the truth is going to kill me. Hack. I'm a meal to some creature right now. The monster who did this to me was..." The man stopped when some huge veins went into the back of his neck into his brain. As they observed the effect of the human, the citizens threw up or covered their mouths in shock. Okay, I guess this was relevant, sorry. Jack checked the human's wrist for a pulse. Okay, it should be an apostrophe S. The human was bleeding internally from his nose, mouth, and eyes. The small wavy brown hair dropped from his head. Jack held the man in his arms. Then Jack saw a shadow. "What?" Jack gasped in amazement. It looked like a cloaked person. A woman. It couldn't be, Jack asked himself. Gwendoline? The figure ran away, taking with her a piece of the man, which caused blood to drip from her jaws. Jack's eye sockets opened wide with astonishment. "Let's go, Jack," Brooke stated in a gruff voice. "You still need to find your wife's soul," Brooke then put on Jack's shoulder. Again, it should be an apostrophe S. "This human, he looks so helpless in my hands," Jack stated in a melancholy tone. "Let's get going," Locke stated, putting his hand to his nose. "That human stench is nauseating." Jack looked behind at sleeping face of his departed wife that Brooke carried on his shoulder. "Let's depart," Jack said, Hardin to his comrades. Okay, let's move on to chapter 9, which is the final chapter. Okay, let's get going. Well, I'm going. There's no one here that makes this quest important except for Sally. But look at her, she's already dead. I don't know about you, but I'm calling it quits. Locke pined to Jack. Fine, go. I don't really understand why I needed you in the first place. Yes, why did he need Locke, or whatever his name is, in the first place? Jack said, "My badminton competition is far more important than going on an endless goose chase, so bye." The devil dressed boy retired. Jack, "Can't I stay?" "There's nothing I can really do but protect you," Brooke asked in a concerned manner. "Sorry, but I'm just fine alone. Why don't you go home?" Jack asked. "All right. If you're in trouble, my nose will track back to you," Brooke reassured Jack as he left. Okay, so this is a stupid excuse to have Jack be by himself, to be blatantly honest with you. Dark and dismal, the black setting in Jack's direction. Hells, why am I still here? I've hummed a lot recently, Jack said as he sat on a boulder in the hinterlands, as green as the Christmas lights when he went to Christmas Town. A thought made him think that all was ending for him, just thinking of what is making him stall. While pondering his thoughts, a creature of shadow was overlooking in the trees. "Hello, Jack," said a voice to Jack's left earhole. The voice quickly left and jumped out from hiding. "Wait, who are you?" Jack asked quickly while standing up. The form looked like a huge shadowy woman, but transformed into a shadow that wore a huge cloak. The face was a skull, and it looked like his hat, which was a tricorner, was connected to his huge shadowy cloaked figure. "Are you Grimacer, the one who couldn't find his place in any other holiday except for mine?" Jack answered while glancing. "So, you know my name. How interesting to know that a knowledgeable figure than kings have passed." The dark figure spoke. Jack dumbfoundedly fell off the boulder of stone. "Oh, so the Pumpkin King can be afraid. Are you going to just stay on the ground, frightened?" Grimacer said with a white grin in the dark. Grimacer smiled with pleasement. "Grimacer, you were the female wraith who ate that poor man's body, weren't you?" Jack said as he breathed hard. That's very grim to you, I might have to say. That piggy's body tasted excellent. Are you hungry to eat my shadow just like I did to that man? I can still taste the flavor in my mouth. The crimson of blood just makes me feel excellent. He spoke to Jack with settled tone. Jack's eye sockets widened at the sentence. I was hungry, just like I lusted after Sally, Grimacer said. That is not how you spell psychotic. People, use spell check. Please. You psychotic wraith. Jack backed away from the wraith, still sitting on ground. How could he be... whatever. Her soul was succulent, though you might want it back, he said, looking at his fist. The hells I do. Okay, hells should not be plural. Jack said with angst. Why don't you take off that repulsive smile? Jack asked. Because it will show something you do not want to see. Grimacer explained, but if you really want her soul, you'll have to defeat me. Jack stared with a burst of anger. I don't really want to kill anyone. Give Sally her soul. Brooke jumped at brown-cloaked wraith from nowhere. Who's this, your guard dog? Grimacer asked questionably to Jack. The wraith levitated Brooke from the ground. Please, I beg you not to hurt him. He's my friend. Jack begged to Grimacer. You creep. Why would you do this? Brooke asked to Grimacer. You ignorant hound. I am like every villain that every hero meets. We are all hungry, some for power and some for just killing. Though I am a villain, I have a different touch of perspective. I eat to survive. Whatever I eat regenerates into a monster. Like that werecat, my breakfast was running away. He explained to the two heroes. You know what makes you a villain? You never shut up. Jack yelled at the wraith. That felt good. Jack, you said shut up, Brooke proclaimed. Don't worry, I met his type before. Jack told him. Hello, I'm right here, Grimacer spoke to get Jack's attention. Oh, Grimacer, we didn't see you there, Jack waved. What the fuck? Jack, remember, I have your wife, Grimacer said as he pulled the arm of Jack's wife. Go, Jack, save yourself, Sally said as she struggled through Grimacer's arms. Sally, Jack yelled as he ran to her. Wait, Jack, Brooke stopped the skeleton. Grim, take me for Sally's place. Wait, are you sure you want to do this? Jack asked Brooke. All right, I must debt my friend just as I should for myself. Jack, I always considered you as a father to me, Brooke said. Jack shed a tear as Brooke walked towards the wraith. Goodbye, my friend, Jack said to himself. Now, before we go to judgment, there's something missing, Grimacer said. He punched Brooke to open a hole in his chest. Brooke's chest was dripping blood. I'm still hungry. Let's see what's under the cloak, Brooke said as he pulled out the skull of Grimacer with the last of his strength. No, Grimacer said in reaction. As he deflated, the skull rolled onto the Brooke's hand and into Jack's. Get the skull and break it, Brooke said as he covered his wounded spot. Jack grabbed onto the skull and looked at it. He looked at the white reflection and saw himself. Angst at the skull, he threw it down on the stone he was sitting on with all his might. This is for Brooke and Sally, Jack said to the skull as the skull cracked. A sphere of light levitated up. From the sphere came a dim shape of a body. It was Sally. Sally, I was a coward. I should have saved you. No small amount of defeating a true villain can just save you, Jack said. You're a hero more than a coward. I love you for defeating all the villains of our town and others. Please don't cry for me. Cry for Brooke, Sally told him. Jack went to Brooke's body. Goodbye, my son, Jack said as he walked and digged him a grave. He carried Sally's body up and took her home. Jack dropped the spirit into her body. Sally woke and yawned. I slept like a log, Sally stretched, not remembering what happened. What's wrong, Jack? She asked Jack. Jack looked at her mesmerized that she hadn't remembered a thing. Sally, it's nothing. Are you hungry? Jack asked. Yes, thanks. Thanks for being such a great husband, Sally said. She kissed Jack on the cheek. I'll be outside waiting for you. Finn. Okay. You know, this story had potential, but it was all over the place, and the grammar was atrocious. It was atrocious. It was just all over the place, and because of how scattered some of the stuff in the story was, it was hard to figure out what the heck was going on. It really was. It really was. Frankly, if Mindspatch really cares about this story, they would rewrite it. And if they want tips from me for when they rewrite it, they can go ahead and ask me. Because, I do think this story has potential, but it's just so badly laid out and all over the place. It was hard to follow what was going on. It really was. And a lot of the stuff with Block, Shock, and whatever the other person is, was just pointless. It really was. Oh yeah. Well, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it. You listen. I'm going to listen to some music.